Justin Bieber, Selena Gomez, Kevin Durant, Kylie Jenner, Kendall Jenner, Vanessa Hudgens. The A-list rolled into Hillsong NYC every Sunday, like it was a red carpet event, and the man they came to see looked more like a nightclub owner than a pastor. Carl Lentz wore designer clothes, tattooed arms, and a smirk that made GQ call him the hype pastor. He baptized Bieber at 2 a.m. in a bathtub. He lived with the pop star for 2 months. He was everywhere. On November 4th, 2020, Hillsong fired him. The reason: moral failures. The receipts: worse than anyone imagined. Hillsong didn't start in Manhattan. It started in the suburbs of Sydney, Australia. Brian and Bobby Houston founded the original Hillsong Church in 1983. By the 2000s, it had become a global phenomenon. 150,000 members across 30 countries in worship music that dominated Christian radio, annual conferences that filled arenas. The formula was simple: make church feel like a concert. High production value, emotional music, relatable sermons, come as you are. Carl Lentz learned that formula at Hillsong's training program in Australia. That's where he met his wife, Laura. That's where he became a believer in the Hillsong brand. And in 2010, he pitched the idea that would change his life: bring Hillsong to New York City. Lentz and Joel Houston, Brian Houston's son, launched Hillsong NYC together. Their first services were held at Irving Plaza in the Gramercy neighborhood of Manhattan, a venue that functioned as a concert hall by night, a church by Sunday morning. The lines stretched around the block. The congregants looked like they were headed to a music festival, not a worship service. Within years, Hillsong NYC was drawing thousands every week, and Carl Lentz became its face. The celebrity access came fast. Justin Bieber was at the peak of his troubles in 2014, peeing in a bucket, getting arrested, spiraling publicly. Someone connected him with Lentz. The pop star moved into the pastor's home for nearly 2 months. Lentz became his spiritual guide, his confidant, his friend. The baptism happened at 2 a.m. in the bathtub of Tyson Chandler, then a New York Knicks center. Bieber had insisted on being baptized after professing his faith. Lentz made it happen. Photos of the two together flooded Instagram. Lentz at Madison Square Garden with Bieber. Lentz at fashion events with Bieber. Lentz courtside at basketball games, designer sneakers on, looking nothing like any pastor most people had ever seen. The celebrity roster grew. Selena Gomez attended services. Kevin Durant was baptized. Chris Pratt and Katherine Schwarzenegger showed up. Kylie and Kendall Jenner were spotted. Vanessa Hudgens and Austin Butler. Nick Jonas, Bono. People say we cater to celebrities, Lentz told GQ in a profile. And I say yes, we do. Celebrities deserve a relationship with God. Celebrities deserve a place to pray. The profile pieces multiplied. GQ described Hillsong's aesthetic as fashion-forward, Disney Channel teen, aggressively accessorized. The congregation wore clear glasses and streetwear. The services felt more like raves than revivals. The music had 50 million weekly listeners across Hillsong's 3 record labels. Lentz appeared on Oprah's Super Soul Sunday. He appeared on The View. He was asked about abortion and gave an answer so vague it made headlines. The cultural, religious norm right now is that if you and I disagree, we're done. I don't believe that's the case. 8 days later, he walked it back on Twitter. None of it mattered. The attention was oxygen. Hillsong NYC kept growing. At his peak, Lentz earned nearly $300,000 a year in salary. He lived in a trendy Brooklyn neighborhood. He looked the part, talked the part, and the cameras loved him. But behind the designer clothes and celebrity selfies, something else was happening. On November 4th, 2020, Brian Houston sent an email to Hillsong East Coast members. Carl Lentz had been fired. The reason? Leadership issues and breaches of trust, plus a recent revelation of moral failures. The next day, Lentz posted on Instagram, "I was unfaithful in my marriage, the most important relationship in my life, and held accountable for that." He didn't name the woman, but she named herself. Ronan Kareem was a 34-year-old Brooklyn-based fashion designer. Rings, kimonos, accessories under her brand Wahidin. She told Vanity Fair, then Good Morning America, that she and Lentz had met in May 2020 at Domino Park in Williamsburg. The pandemic had just locked down New York. Social distancing circles were painted on the grass. Kareem was looking for a spot to sit with her dog. Lentz offered his. He didn't tell her he was a pastor. He said he was a sports agent. He wasn't wearing a wedding ring. When she asked his last name, he refused. He didn't want her to Google him. She Googled him anyway. By then, she said, she'd already started falling. Even after she confronted him about being married, 17 years, 3 children, the affair continued for 5 months. It ended when Laura Lentz found their text messages. The messages were connected to Carl's work computer. Laura discovered them at the Hillsong office. Other staff members were present. Kareem told GMA that Lentz was a professional narcissist who should never be a pastor. "When you give somebody so much power," she said, "they become God to people." But Ronan Kareem wasn't the only story. In leaked audio reported by Page 6, Brian Houston called Lentz narcissistic and a difficult man to work with. Houston also claimed the affair with Kareem wasn't the only one, that Lentz had engaged in more than one extramarital relationship. Then came the investigation. The Hillsong commissioned New York City law firm Zuckerman, Gore Brandeis, and Crossman to examine what had happened at Hillsong NYC. The 51-page internal report, completed in January 2021, was obtained by the Christian Post in 2022. The findings were brutal. It was not uncommon for volunteers and staff who had frequent interaction with Carl Lentz to report that such interaction had caused them to suffer from mental illness. The report noted that Lentz refused to answer questions regarding whether the massages he received were sexual in nature. Text messages showed masseuses quoting him for massages and also other sexual acts. Another woman came forward. Leona Keems, who had worked as the Lentz family's nanny for 7 years and now led Hillsong Boston with her husband, accused Lentz of manipulation, control, bullying, abuse of power, and sexual abuse. She alleged the assaults happened from 2011 to 2017. Lentz denied the allegations, but in the 2023 FX documentary, The Secrets of Hillsong, he admitted to an Adderall addiction and to having an inappropriate relationship with Kims, though he characterized it differently than she did. The documentary also revealed something else. For the first time, Lentz spoke publicly about being molested as a child. He was 5 or 6 years old. He said the trauma altered my brain chemistry, altered my habits, altered my view of sex. He developed patterns of secrecy, hiding, risk-taking that he could never explain. His wife Laura, interviewed alongside him, described the moment she learned about his infidelity. Confused, and then sad, broken, and shattered. She stayed. "Why did you stay?" Laura said in the documentary. "When my kids ask me that," I said, "because I see your dad trying and I see him changing, and if I didn't see that, and when I don't see that, I would leave." Lentz went to rehab. He got accountability partners. He began therapy. Laura rebuilt trust, slowly, conditionally. But the celebrity friendships were gone. TMZ reported in 2018 that Bieber and Lentz had spiritually split ways 2 years before the scandal even broke. By the time Lentz was fired, the pop star's connection to his former mentor had already faded. In 2024, Lentz addressed the loss in an interview. When you are at a certain level of fame, the only thing you have with somebody is trust. That's all you have. They don't need money. People don't need your opportunities. So when that trust is violated, yes, it's times 10, because that's all we had. He said he regretted breaking that trust. He said he understood why Bieber and others walked away. As of his most recent interviews, Lentz has said he has no desire to return to the pulpit. The stage that made him famous, the crowds that validated him, the spotlight that followed him everywhere, he's done with it. Hillsong itself never recovered. Brian Houston resigned in March 2022 after his own investigation revealed inappropriate behavior with 2 women in 2019. He faced trial in Australia for allegedly concealing his father Frank Houston's child sexual abuse, though he was later found not guilty. 11 of Hillsong's 16 U.S. campuses departed by early 2025. NYC attendance collapsed from 8 to 10,000 down to around 500. Revenue fell roughly 20%, and staff accepted voluntary redundancies to cut costs. The global church that once drew 150,000 weekly attendees had fractured. And Carl Lentz? He's still married to Laura. Their children have reportedly forgiven him. He's no longer on Instagram posting selfies with celebrities. He's no longer packing out Irving Plaza on Sunday mornings. He's no longer the face of anything. In 2023, Transformation Church announced they'd hired Lentz as a strategist. The church believed he was restored. Maybe he is. Maybe the therapy worked. Maybe the accountability partners keep him honest. Maybe the patterns of secrecy finally broke. Or maybe not. Here's what the Carl Lentz story actually reveals. It reveals that proximity to fame isn't the same as accountability. Lentz had access to some of the most famous people on earth. None of that access came with supervision. None of it came with limits. It reveals that charisma isn't character. The same qualities that made Lentz magnetic, the confidence, the style, the ease with celebrity, allowed him to operate without scrutiny for years. And it reveals something about what we want from spiritual leaders. We want them cool. We want them relatable. We want them on Instagram, courtside, dressed like us, but somehow holier than us. But maybe that's not what leaders should be. 2 a.m. in a bathtub. Justin Bieber, Carl Lentz. A baptism that launched 1,000 headlines. Today, Bieber rarely speaks about his former pastor. Lentz rarely speaks about Bieber. The baptism that symbolized everything. The celebrity access, the cultural relevance, the cool Christianity of Hillsong NYC now exists as a memory of something that fell apart. The lights went out. The crowds left. The celebrities found other churches or no church at all. Carl Lentz is still here, somewhere, trying to rebuild what remains. Whether that's enough, whether any of it was ever real, depends on who you ask.